Hi there, welcome to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 136. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr brothers. And we're very excited to have you join us this week. We have Premier of New Brunswick, Susan Holt. Susan, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited and nervous at the same time.
Well, in 5 years, we're in our fifth year of our show, and you're the first sitting Premier to be on our show. So we're very honored to have you.
Yes,
thank you.
finally,
and this isn't my first time on the Carr Brothers Show. This is my second appearance.
Very
Not
good.
very many. We'll have to go back through and count how many have come second.
returned.
Not very many.
No.
Not yet, no.
First time in studio. The last one I
Right.
think we were doing.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
wow.
And it's been 5 years, so we're 136 episodes. We're on CHCO TV, and which is broadcast on Bell, which that's been on Bell, for
what's
several
the other,
years.
What's the other good news, though,
Well,
Jack?
the other good news is we're on Rogers and Shaw. It's just in the last 6 months, CHCO TV's carried on Rogers and Shaw Cable. So anyone in New Brunswick that has cable has access to CHCO TV.
Excellent.
And it's the only provider that has that, only channel, community channel that has that
Look,
accessibility.
congratulations. I mean, 136 episodes
Thank
over
you.
5 years, and it sounds like strength to strength. You're just growing the following, growing the channels, and
And we're very
amazing
happy
that you're on
that
live
the
TV.
regulatory changes were made that allowed CHCO to become like an educational-based TV channel.
Destination, yeah.
And it's great. It puts us province-wide, so.
So we're really excited to have you, Susan.
Yeah.
You've been the new Premier, still the new Premier for a few months now.
Yeah, we're not quite 4 months.
4
wow.
months.
Yeah.
And you're the first female Premier of New Brunswick. That never gets mentioned, but it's very historic. And yeah, so what's it been like since becoming Premier?
Oh, gosh.
This is
can you
everything
tell
you
us?
thought it would be.
Yeah.
And more. It's been amazing. I mean, it's still, we're only 4 months in. So New Brunswickers have been so generous with how they've come up to me, to my family, to share kind words. I mean, I literally was just walking down the streets of Fredericton today and had someone still say, I voted for you. Like 4 months later, that still gives me some goosebumps. People have been really warm and generous in their reception of our government. And I'm still I'm still a little surprised that we won 31 seats and that I'm the Premier of New Brunswick. It's a little surprised. It's also really serious.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. A lot of things to manage, and not enough hours in the day to do it, really, to divide yourself and your resources across all the different challenges and opportunities we're facing. But look, I'm really grateful. The family has been troopers throughout. Actually, I think it's been much better for them to be on the other side of an election. I don't know if your families would have experienced the post-election relief regardless of outcome. The kids have settled in and started breathing a little more
routines.
deeply. And so, it's been really good.
It was quite an amazing election night, all the excitement, and you saw with your campaign in particular, the energy throughout the campaign. It just kept increasing, the crowds that came, and then on election night, your family and the girls and all your supporters. So it was enjoyable to watch all that effort and work. And then basically did the real work start almost immediately the next day?
Oh, yeah, literally, right?
That's kind of a
Transition
leading
starts the next day. And so people used to say to me, oh, you must be looking forward to the day after the election. And I was like, I'm really looking forward to Christmas, because we knew that there was going to be, okay, you got to jump in, you got to build your team, you've got to pick cabinet. We wanted to get into the legislature right away, which was a big ask of some brand new people who were trying to figure out stuff that you folks know well. They've got to get a constituency office. They have to learn a ministry and a portfolio. They've got binders upon binders, and we're also asking them to learn how the ledge works and take questions and pass legislation within 2 or 3 weeks on the job. So we tried to cram a lot in before Christmas. And then took a break.
And you did. You had, significant legislation. It wasn't just fluffy stuff as well. It was a combination, but you had some significant legislation that ministers had to introduce and answer questions to and be prepared.
Yeah, remind us some of your top legislation that you had to bring
We
in.
put in the rent cap. Thanks for
Rent
that.
cap.
Great question, Jeff.
I know it was right at the tip of my tongue,
it was-
but I just couldn't,
Yeah, the rent cap was the first big one that was a commitment, and that we wanted to move quickly on it so that it could benefit New Brunswickers quickly, came into effect Feb 1, but was passed before Christmas. We had to put the 15% off of new multi-unit housing developments into the speech from the throne and get the speech from the throne passed in order for us to be able to take 15% off developments as of November 15th. That benefit gets put in place retroactively.
For the HST? No.
For HST, that's right.
On new builds, multi-unit ones?
New build multi-units, that's right.
So you kind of really locked that in last week?
Well,
the media,
by putting it in the speech from the throne and passing the speech from the throne was what locked it in.
Right.
And then there's the administrative mechanics of a letter
Details.
to finance and CRA saying, yes, that rebate is now on the CRA website, those kinds of things.
And retroactive too to middle of November.
Oh,
so
yes, that's
that'll be
right.
helpful.
I saw that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That'll
Well,
be
we
helpful for
desperately
development.
need housing.
Some housing.
Right?
Yeah.
We need to get more things built. You folks know that well.
Yeah.
And so
What other legislation?
we tabled the removal of the carbon adjuster.
Right, I was going to ask about
That ended up getting pushed to committee, so it's actually in Law Amendments Committee right now this week.
it is
being
going this week.
debated.
Okay.
Yeah, we had the first speakers on it today, and
Okay.
so we had hoped that we would have gotten that passed through December, so that we could offer that benefit at the pumps to New Brunswickers. But there's the legislature and there's opposition and there's
I think it's okay to go to committee though. I think especially law amendments. I think it's okay that you send it there and let it go through that process so that you can hear from who you need to hear from to make that happen. Lots of times in the past, governments, they just don't want to go to committee. They don't want witnesses. They don't want any of that business. But with something that important, I think we really need to understand, does it get passed on? Is there a way to adjust? Is it an EUB problem?
Yeah.
You know, is it all that structure? Is it regulations? So you're going to be able to hear all that and get the proper reporting.
That's
so
it.
Everybody would
bottom
love
line,
to have the 4 cents, I'm sure, but
well, it's now 7 cents, right? Now it's we want better prices at the pump for New Brunswickers, but we don't want small rural gas stations to shut down because we want people to have access to affordable gas.
I saw on the news today the delivery companies are now talking about how that will affect them. So there's maybe another part of it nobody realized. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Well,
how it
that's
goes.
why it's
But
good
that's
to
that
have
law
that
amendment. So
at
that was
level.
another one.
What else? You had the nurses
Nurses retention bonuses. That's right.
Did
We
those
got
all go out
those.
the door into the hands of?
Got all those out the door, and even a few more than we thought because we did some prorating of part-time hours rather than applying their part-time percentage and got those out not just to government nurses but to QP, NBU, NBNU nurses.
And likely there was a whole kind of series of issues to have to consider when you said this. What did you mean, and who does this include, and
like
how do we
special
get
care,
it,
special
and
care
who's,
home nurses.
who's in, who's out, and probably a lot more than what we would imagine. But
You
had to
learn
work
that a
through
nurse
all
is not a nurse is not a nurse, right? There's different versions of nurses, classifications. I am a nurse, but I'm doing this, or in this environment, in that environment, in this other environment, privately. So
And did that get settled on the with the special care home nurses? Or is that still
that's
in
still
the limbo or in the
that's
works,
still in
working through
conversation.
it? Because the hospice nurses that just came up there last week or 2 weeks ago. That's another category that hopefully they'll be able to get their incentive as well. So, and is that being worked on too?
Yeah, well, we're just actually doing a number of things with hospice right now. We just put a new 5-year funding agreement in place with Bobby's. I think I'm at hospice in Fredericton here next week because they deliver both amazing services to patients and their families, but it's also good for the bottom line. Like that's a better place to receive end of life care than a hospital. And so
when you think of it that way too, it's good value.
yeah, it's great.
So yeah,
value.
so that's been very busy. And then another one, I don't think it required legislation. I don't think that's why you're able to get it moved along quicker. Is the MB Power, the MB Power, and
10%.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
10% reduction.
Yeah, I've had some people ask me if I regret not doing it in April because people would have seen it and felt the 10% discount in April, and in January it disappears in a bill that is the highest one you're getting, and that has spiked this year in ways a lot of people didn't expect. But we wanted to deliver that benefit as soon as we could because we were hearing that power bills were really challenging for folks for a long time, and rates went up and are going to continue to go up. And so we worked it out that we could put a 10% rebate in, and we could do that really quickly, Jan 1, and not wait till April, not use up our we have limited room to provide GST rebates. Those are capped with the federal government, and if we had put this in that way, it would have used up all of the space that we had for that, and we couldn't put anything else in a GST-free category. So we decided to deliver the same value of benefit a different way and to do it Jan 1. But I know a lot of people, even like us, felt like 10%. Where is that?
Go?
My bill just went up 30%. It disappeared.
Because you couldn't apply it to the total bill. I think you could apply it on just on the usage.
Applied it to the
right?
electricity
so the service
consumption.
charges and stuff. You couldn't put it on any of that. So,
Yeah.
but it's on the consumption, which is a big deal because it's going to go up again this spring, right? So we'll take it.
Oh, look.
How do you
We could
manage
spend
it?
this whole time talking Epi Power, I think. I don't know
know.
if that's what you want to do.
No,
Okay.
and,
Really, but-
that audit is still underway. Is they had Epi Power or
The smart
independent
meter audit,
auditors doing
smart
it.
meter
Well, not
auditors?
the smart meter, but
I thought
the
those.
big spike.
They're auditing this.
yeah,
They were reviewing the spike, and
right.
they're expected at public accounts this Thursday.
okay.
And the expectations that they would be tabling what they've learned.
Okay.
I suppose this will probably be airing on
the evening
Thursday.
of the, yes.
So when the time this is aired, we will know
Yep.
what's gone down.
Okay.
But
We'll get some sort of a testimony from the people at public accounts. There won't be a final decision by the legislature if they decide to make any reports or recommendations. But hey, we should just be on location for a lot of these committees.
Yeah.
Been there,
can
done
you
that.
imagine a Carr Brothers post committee? Like just get the folks as they're coming out.
We'll compete with Mark Delahunt.
I was going to say, I can feel
yeah.
traditional media shaking in their boots a little bit.
Yeah,
with
we'll
it.
compete with
Hey, guys,
Charles
you know.
LeBlanc. Yeah?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, that's a busy time.
Yeah,
There's
geez,
a lot,
yes.
and I mean, you had a pretty hefty platform, so that's a lot to do in 4 years.
Yeah.
And to get out the gate and get at it it's challenging. Yeah. For us that have been there, you know, getting in office and getting legislation started and getting bureaucracy to go along with your platform it can be tricky. But they seem to be motivated.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
Well, you know
all
what?
seem to be.
The civil service has responded. I thought that they might maybe feel like we did as candidates, a little burnt out.
Yeah.
I guess they didn't go through an election campaign, but there's still a lot of unrest with the civil service during an election. And so on October 22nd, they were bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to help, like had already gone through the platform, had come to us with thoughts on implementation and ready to move. I was beyond impressed with the response that we've gotten from the civil service since October. It really has felt really supportive. It's felt quicker than I was expecting. I think a lot of us have that sense that bureaucracies can be slow.
No, it was quicker than
But,
I expected as well.
yeah.
So it was good.
Yeah, we hit the ground running
Yeah.
and they were right there alongside us. So
What were some of the positive highlights, happy moments, surprises, and then I'll ask you, what's been the most challenge?
some of the surprises for me have been how people have reacted to the little things. So let me think of an example. Early, I had mandate letters for ministers.
Yes.
And I thought, I'll go see the ministers and I'll bring them their mandate letters.
That's a big deal.
Goes over.
That is it.
I
You
never
didn't
got
just
one.
put it on the website and here's your link and go find it.
Oh,
Have you
your
actually
reaction
met?
is cracking me up.
Yeah.
Well, because apparently the act of leaving the office and showing up at a minister's office
Oh, yeah, right.
was unusual.
geez.
Oh, gee.
Here's your letter.
But how did everyone react as you entered the building?
Well,
and
this
went
was
down
it.
to
People were like,
the executive
She
office?
didn't tell us
What do
she
you
was
she didn't tell us
coming.
she was coming. What's the premier doing here? We've never had the premier here before. I can't. Do you? And I was like, I'm just dropping in to see Cindy. I'm just gonna go down the hall and like, oh, okay. But the premier's never been in this building before. I was like, the premier's never been in
And
the
we don't
social
call her
development.
Cindy, we call her minister.
Sorry. Yes,
No,
you're
No,
right.
the
Not
staff.
you.
No, not us. You. That's what they're saying.
But it was that sort of like, and it happened to get like the premier had never been in Petal or in social development or in, and I was like, wow, I went down a couple floors to the fourth floor and was wandering around looking for the minister's office and people were panicking.
Yeah, I did that.
Coming out of cubicles like, like, I'm just looking for the minister.
Just dropping a letter.
I did that.
Just dropping a letter off. But so some of those reactions have been, I gave a Christmas card to one of the deputies who was like, wow, this is the first time I've gotten
Like a personalized.
a personalized
Oh, wow.
Christmas card. And I was like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I did that at King's Place when I was the Minister of Transportation Infrastructure. I went down to the fourth floor and then the third floor, and the executive staff did not like that at all. I should not be going down there visiting. I was like, why not?
Just,
a lot of these people are constituents anyhow, and they're friends.
We always
so they get used to it.
Well, we always
it's
used
a
to
shock.
think
Well, and
it
it's
was
the
because
same-
they didn't want us to know what was actually going on.
To know what
the
you were actually
deputies
doing.
didn't want to tell us.
But it's been the same all over the province, right? As I've gotten out and
Well,
wanted
you're out
to go
around
see
everywhere.
folks.
You're out doing stuff all over the place.
And you get the same thing, right? Like, I can't believe you're here.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Well, how do you, because you said, when you first got elected as well as premier, and because you've been elected previous to that, but, and then you have everything coming at you and all the issues, as you said, there's a lot to it, but how are you able to decompartmentalize what your lane and what others should be doing and stay focused on the reaching out to people and, as Jody just mentioned, you're everywhere. Well, that takes being out of the office and not maybe micromanaging perhaps, and to get out of the office and actually see New Brunswickers. How do you juggle that?
I'll tell you the secret.
Yeah. Yeah.
We elected an amazing team.
Yeah.
Like, these ministers have, and many of them knew, but Cindy Miles is a great example.
Yes,
you
but-
folks know Cindy.
Yeah.
She jumped in like a fish in water, knew as if she'd been there 10 years, right? She just jumped in, soaked it up, and I don't have to worry about social development. Cindy and her deputy Jim, the minister, they're on top of it. They'll bring me the issues. The same with our Minister of Health, who is new to all of this, a new politician, new MLA, but not new to health. Right? He's deeply versed in how our health system works and how it doesn't work. And so he's driving that forward and driving our focus on primary care transportation, and he doesn't need me in his hair. Right? And so, and same like my attorney general and minister focused on mental health and addictions. He's exceptional. The whole team is exceptional. And so I don't have to handhold or micromanage cabinet or caucus or the ministers or the departments, because I've been spending a lot of my time on tariffs and on national work with the premiers and international work in Washington.
Well, on that note, tariffs is probably a segment of its own here, or a lot of it.
Yeah.
So why don't we take a quick break?
Okay. Yeah.
We'll hear from our PSAs, public service announcements at CHO. When we come back, we will continue the conversation with Premier Holt.
Hi there, welcome back to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 136. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr brothers. Jack, where'd we leave off?
Well, Jeff.
Jeff?
That's
Jeff,
okay.
where did we leave? I get you two mixed
This
up.
is the common thing that we get, guys, and no shock to anyone, is we get called each other's names all the time. So that's okay.
Yeah,
we could
yeah,
be
yeah.
worse things we could be called. But when we broke for the commercial at the end of the last segment, we were just getting into the topic of tariffs and that whole discussion. Premier, you brought that up about tariffs, and I would think that would be probably your first controversial file, like upon taking office, but one of the ones that really you weren't prepared for. Obviously, nobody was really prepared for it, I don't think, the depth of it and the seriousness of it, but that has really taken a lot of your attention from files that you would really rather be working on that are important in New Brunswick as well. So tell us how you've kind of settled into that and some of the whirlwind that's been, and how that's really distracted a lot of not just New Brunswickers but Canadians in general, and what you're hearing from people.
Yeah, a lot of worry is what I'm hearing from people, right? Nobody was expecting 25% tariffs across the board on all Canadian goods. The economic impact of that is huge. And what that means for New Brunswick as the most trade-exposed province in Canada when it comes to sales to the U.S. is going to get hit the hardest. And St. John within New Brunswick is going to get hit the hardest. And it's a challenging thing to fight against because we have an opponent who's very unpredictable. Reason does not seem to be the most effective way to get your point across there, but we need a strong economy in New Brunswick, right? We need good paying jobs. We need people to be working in order for us to be able to have the resources to deliver a better healthcare system. So we've got to protect our economy and our exports, and we've got to fight these tariffs with everything we have to prevent them. That's still the goal, as unlikely as it may be, and if not, to get rid of them as quickly as possible so that we don't see a massive economic hit to New Brunswick.
And that is one of the main challenges, is you just don't know what you're dealing with until it gets announced in a press conference, in the White House. So what kind of work have you been doing with your team, and who, what's been going on within government that we don't see or hear about, to work on some of these contingency plans?
There's been a lot of work, right?
When I'm talking about interprovincial trade barriers, is there task force put in place? Tell us a little bit about that. I think New Brunswickers want to hear.
Yeah,
I'm glad you think so, because there has been a lot of work in a lot of phases. The first bunch of work was the national work with premiers and the federal government to get a sense for what direction are we going in here, and there's a retaliation approach that we're working hard to make sure that the inputs that New Brunswick businesses need don't find themselves on that list, so we don't, shoot ourselves in the foot. But then within government, we're looking at how do we help workers who are affected? What do those programs look like, and how quickly could they be turned around? How do we affect businesses that are affected? What is the right kind of help for things that might be a cash flow problem, a revenue problem? How do we help them find new customers, right? If we're going to lose competitiveness in the U.S., who's the next customer that we're going to pick up, and is that going to be in Canada or in Europe or in Asia? And thankfully, businesses are finally ready to have that conversation. It's been hard to get people interested in diversifying their market when you have a customer that is literally 20 minutes away, or the border's close and you can drive there, and it's pretty easy to do business in the US. Why would I spend time figuring out how to put my stuff on a ship and get it over to a new market when there's an easy one next door? But now businesses are asking us for that help for market diversification. The interprovincial trade barriers conversation, I have been shocked and thrilled with the uptake. This was a file that I worked on a bit when I was a civil servant all those years ago. And it was really tedious work, right? Regulatory harmonization across 13 different regulatory jurisdictions. And you'd look at it one by one and think, what do I need to do to get a pipe fitter to work on this boiler in this province? And then how do I make it work in that province? And it's for very valuable and special people who aren't me to do that kind of work. But now there's this broad, let's harmonize everything. Let's let people, especially healthcare professionals, if you're a nurse in Manitoba, you should be able to be a nurse in New Brunswick. And if you're a doctor in Quebec, you should be able to be a doctor in New Brunswick. And if you're a healthcare professional anywhere in Canada, couldn't we all agree that we recognize each other's qualifications and certifications and registrations? And so I see a lot of appetite among the premiers and the federal government to clear out some of those interprovincial regulations that make it more expensive, more red tape, more paperwork to try to do business in other places.
So is Premier Legault, is he playing ball? Because he's a guarded individual, and Quebec has always been fairly guarded.
Quebec has always been a really challenging market.
I spoke a lot about it when I was in opposition, about contractors coming here and things like that, and vice versa. And so, but he's at the table.
He's at the table, and he's willing to be a part of the national effort, because it's good for Canada. It's good for the Canadian economy if we all play. Quebec is a unique one, and you and I have both seen with businesses in New Brunswick the challenges of they have a fully unionized, particularly in the construction section market, that we can't play in, but they can walk into New Brunswick and compete all day long. And so there isn't a lot of reciprocal activity there. So I'm hopeful that this is our chance to really
That'd be great.
Open up the borders and have people and goods move freely all across Canada.
A couple of weeks ago, we had Herb Emery, economist, on our show, and he talked a lot about tariffs and the dollar, and basically counter tariffs maybe come into a wash, but a real focus needed on how businesses can be competitive and cost can be lower in New Brunswick. Right now, there's some of the higher costs, I guess, in property tax and energy costs and labor costs and whatnot. What are you hearing from businesses about that? And are you working on those aspects for our businesses to be more competitive?
Certainly competitiveness has come up out of this conversation, in part in regards to other provinces and the U.S., right? If we don't have our easy access to the market we used to compete in the U.S. Because these tariffs are making our prices non-competitive, what does it mean to be competitive elsewhere? And what are the fundamentals that make a business competitive in New Brunswick, right? We have heard this week about energy rates. New Brunswickers know well. We already talked about the challenges people are facing with their power bills. Businesses are facing those same challenges with the cost of energy, particularly if you're in manufacturing or heavy industry. We have, well, some of the regulatory barriers are there. We actually have good access to labor. I mean, businesses have struggled to find the people they need a little bit, but we can still get people and get people to choose to live here right now.
You on that competitiveness, if it's okay right now, you've referred to this week. Irving Paper has announced a 50% reduction of their operation because of energy prices. This is not really the first time that Irving Paper has mentioned this topic. What's your response to that? Some people are saying they're just kind of threatening the government, or threatening basically the government to negotiate lower energy rates. Others are saying, well, they're a major employer, we need them here. Let's work with them on being more competitive. What's your involvement up to this point, I guess, with Irving Paper on this issue, and will it grow to other businesses and manufacturers? How is this just the first of more to come? So how do you respond to this?
Well, first off, we're always sad when New Brunswickers lose jobs, right? There are 140 people in St. John who had a good paying job and got news on Monday that they were being let go. That's tough. We don't wish that on anyone. And so there's a role for the government to play to make sure that those folks are getting supports, right? That Working NB is showing up there tomorrow and offering their assistance to help those people. And we're hopeful that there are some opportunities even in St. John right now, where we see the port growing like crazy and some other businesses that will be able to help those folks find new employment. But the bigger question is just that, right? That they had to shut down a line at Irving Paper. There's a second line that they're also contemplating shutting down if they can't run it in a way that is profitable and competitive in the face of both these power rates and tariffs, because their products will be exposed to tariffs if they get put in place, and the paper industry won't be exempted, which we don't have any reason to believe it would be. And so are they the first of others? We've certainly heard concerns, particularly from large, heavy industry, that energy rates are a challenge. And anybody who has an energy-intensive business, this is something that we've been looking at specifically. So we call them EITEs, energy-intensive, trade-exposed businesses. And between the Department of Natural Resources and Opportunities New Brunswick and Finance and Treasury Board, we've been looking at how can we help energy-intensive, trade-exposed businesses that are seeing tariffs, that are seeing power rates that are not the same that Quebec is offering and that other places are offering, or that other places are subsidizing. So Ontario has subsidy programs for large industry to buy those rates down. That's not something that New Brunswickers have done. We have things like the LIREP program. You guys will be familiar with that. I don't know if your listeners are interested in digging into the LIREP program, that allows for the generation of power that you can use to offset your bills. But we have to find a way to have a productive industrial base in New Brunswick that is competitive and that produces good paying jobs. We need that. It's a big part of who we have been, who we are, and where our future is. We make things. We make great things in New Brunswick. And if we can't be a place that makes great things, and that's done by energy-intensive, trade-exposed businesses and manufacturers, then what is our both economic and social future? So we have been looking at what can we do? What can we afford to do? What can we not afford? What can what can we not afford not to do?
Right.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Like, because there is it might look expensive to help, but it's pretty expensive to
Well, you have
lose
to
a couple hundred
right.
jobs, and
There's repercussions for it.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to weigh that all out. So is that something the government's actively looking at then? You mentioned the energy intensive
And how does the
manufacturing.
federal government play into that as well, right?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a perfect storm, right? Because as we were talking about energy intensive trade exposed businesses, and then the tariff conversation comes in, and it's like, okay, so trade exposed businesses now it goes beyond just energy intensive ones, and so this needs a support package and this needs a support package at the same time as we're trying to build a budget, looking to the feds to say, how can you help? How much support can we afford to provide? And so those are the conversations happening right now. How do we design it? How do you design it in such a way that it provides help to the folks who really need it in the most sort of sustainable and focused way, and the way that's the best balance of all of the different pressures that government faces?
I would think it would the best cost benefit of the return to people having jobs, paying taxes. So you have to look at that whole package. And I would imagine there'll be some people, if you make some decision on helping large business, especially starting with the letter I, that it's some sort of government favoritism as well. But for the majority part, I think there's a lot of people that, we need these jobs. So, and you're already on the back of your heels with these issues that have been kind of out there a long time. So I guess we'll see what...
Well, what's your goal? What's your timeline to have some of these announced and some of these rolled out? And is it still sort of a wait and see a bit as well of what's going to happen in the United States? Trump already announced, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that he plans on moving ahead with his March 4th tariffs. But is that what you talked about with incentives or subsidies, support? Is that something that'll wait till the budget, or will it be rolled out before then?
No, well, I guess those two things are linked. So we want to have the support package ready for the day that tariffs are put in place in the U.S. so that we can reassure workers and companies that we have supports for you should these tariffs mean layoffs or that your business viability is threatened. You should feel good knowing there is these support packages in place. So we've been trying to get the federal government to make clear what their part of it is, which they have told us that won't come until after we know what the tariffs are, whereas we're trying to be ready on day one.
Yeah.
So we know what those buckets look like. We're figuring out how many dollars to put in those buckets, and then that merges with the budgeting process, right? How much can we afford to spend to keep those jobs and businesses and that economic activity going? But we want to be ready for March 4th. And, who knows what's going to happen on March 4th. We're sort of booked to talk to industry that day so that we can share with them what's going on and what we're doing to support, assuming that it's not midnight when Trump finally releases the news.
So I'm assuming that you have, and maybe you've talked about it, you might have even mentioned it here during this interview, but because you mentioned the different departments, DNR and ONB and finance and treasury. How often do you have a task force group right now?
There's
meeting?
an internal team that used to meet weekly.
Okay.
Now it's more frequent than that because we're getting down to it. That they've already brought proposals to cabinet of like, here's what a support package could look like. Here are the categories. Here's a program we're repurposing. Here's funds that used to be over here that we think we should put here. Here's criteria for programs, because to your point, whatever we offer as government and support, we need to be able to offer it to everyone who needs it, right? It needs to be flexible enough to recognize the differences between some businesses' needs, but it's not doing one thing for a company whose name starts with I. It's putting in place a solution that any company that is energy intensive, trade exposed, employing people, have invested in their own productivity, are running efficiently, and are stuck in this perfect storm. We value those workers, we value those businesses, and we're going to be here to support them no matter what letter of the alphabet their business starts
Because
with.
I would think, too, there might be an opportunity to get some of the businesses to change some of their practices as well, if maybe they're outdated in some ways.
We didn't talk a lot about that piece, but I'm glad you raised it, because there's never been a better time to invest in productivity, right? We don't have all the labor in the world, right? We don't have all the money in the world. We've got to use equipment, technology, AI, the automated and robotic solutions in manufacturing, so that we are squeezing every last ounce of value out of our resources and out of the work. And so thankfully we have a number of New Brunswick businesses that are really leading in that area, but we have some others for whom that's a big capital outlay, right? It's a big purchase up front. It saves you money in the long run. It makes your business more efficient and productive and more competitive. Usually those solutions are often more energy efficient, right? You swap out the old equipment, your old furnace for your new heat pump, and you get the benefit of it. But you've got to be able to afford the heat pump, right?
Yeah. So who's leading the task force, the internal task force? Is it yourself, or is it a deputy minister?
Right now it's being led out of Finance and Treasury Board. So the deputy minister there is Travis Bergen, and Renee Legacy is also the Minister of Energy and the Minister of Finance and Treasury Board. So there's a nice hand-in-hand connection there. But we mentioned natural resources at the table. Pedal is at the table. Opportunities New Brunswick is at the table. And there's a lot of collaborative work happening to make sure that we have the right options in place.
What's the analysis say from government of what the worst case scenario could be with across the board tariffs?
Loss of 6,000 jobs.
Wow. Holy. Yeah, wow. That's if the government didn't do anything. And that's why it's looking at all your options.
It's huge.
That is huge.
It's huge.
So then and then that's your part of your cost benefit. So it's going to cost if you do this, and then some of it you will only see in a couple of years if you have you have outline up front, but
Well,
so that's
is this where we start talking about deficits?
next segment we'll talk about the budget and the deficit.
On my behalf, I appreciate the being proactive as a government. Not surprised that the federal government is saying we're going to wait and see, because then you're chasing the cart down the road and you'll never catch it. And we've seen that happen in the past. But being proactive for New Brunswickers, being ready for whatever option you may have to face, or whatever card you may have to play, is appreciative. So with that being said, we're going to take another short break, and when we come back, we'll start talking about other fun things in government, maybe deficits, maybe otherwise in the hope for the future. So join us in a few minutes.
Hi there, welcome to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 136. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr brothers. The third of the three Carr brothers because I'm the youngest of the three Carr brothers by 7 minutes. And we have a big birthday coming up this year, but enough about us.
Yes.
Right.
What about you, Susan? What do you think about us?
Yeah.
I'm glad my birthday is a little behind yours.
So we have Susan Holt, Premier of New Brunswick. Thanks everyone for joining us and for being here. We've talked about the good times. We've talked about tariffs, and now we wanted to touch on what was mentioned. That's a challenge for the government. We knew that going in. The people of New Brunswick, the deficit situation and upcoming budget. All of this combined has to be having an impact.
Oh yeah. The deficit situation is I think, first off, frustrating to everyone. This is not where we wanted to be. Nobody wanted to table a third quarter $400 million deficit. When we look at what it's made up of, health spending, social development spending, those are areas where we have more work to do. That picture, if we want to improve healthcare for New Brunswickers, needs to be addressed. But the picture doesn't get a lot rosier in 2025 in terms of the economic landscape. We just talked about it, right? Challenges of competitiveness, challenges with the export landscape and how much businesses can sell where. So what we had as a forecast for economic growth back when we built our budget, that was multiple economists, aggregates of forecasts, 1.3% growth, is now dropped down below 1. We're in the 0.9, I think, is the figure we're working with at the moment. That takes a lot of revenue out of the equation at a time when we have services in New Brunswick that have been underinvested in for a long time. Roads, I'll say to the former DTI minister, who knows very well that there was never enough money to catch up on the maintenance deficit.
It takes a long time to catch up. I'm happy to say, though, invested $1 billion for capital in my first year, and it went up. And it's probably going to continue to go up. It always will. But it's a hard job to catch up on crumbling infrastructure. And I could go on and on and on about how many billions per year to catch up on bridges over the next 20 years and things like that. And the cost of doing that is crazy, astronomical.
So the challenges are enormous.
Yes.
How nervous are you that having a large deficit, 400 million, maybe even larger when the next budget comes up? How nervous are you in terms of how that may reflect on you as premier and as the Liberal Party, and some sort of maybe image that you're spendthrift and can't manage?
Yeah, it's a concern. I mean, I'm not someone who takes breaking promises lightly. And so we committed to balanced budgets. It's something that I want to deliver, but at what cost? Because we also committed to improving healthcare and investing in New Brunswickers and delivering the services that New Brunswickers asked us for. We heard them and need, right? Door after door, we heard people saying, I need an affordable place to live, whether it's my rents or my property taxes or my mortgage or, the state of my house. I can't afford it. My power bills are going up. My wages aren't. I need you to help me make life more affordable. And I can't get my parents into a nursing home. I can't get my kids into a doctor's appointment, right? There's a lot of things that New Brunswickers...
Hallway healthcare. We still have to work on that.
That's it. And so we committed to investing in New Brunswickers and to making sure that we put them first. And we're trying to find the balance to do that, because we can't spend all of the money. We've got to make tough choices. But those tough choices are going to be guided by New Brunswickers and the commitments we made to them, how we invest in, and this is maybe the difference. This is the harder work. We have to invest in change. It's not just investing in the current system. We can't just spend money continuing to do things the way we've always done it, because that's how it's always been. We need to spend money delivering things less expensively, which is change, right? That's why we need to focus on primary care. If I can get good primary care, preventative care in my community, that should keep me from showing up at the ER, which is the most expensive healthcare dollar you can spend. So if we can make that shift, same with education, right? If I can invest in education so that we have good, healthy schools where kids are learning literacy and numeracy and they're getting the best possible start in life, then think about that, the productivity for New Brunswick's economy, for our society, of having that generation of kids who had a full belly at school and who could learn and achieve their highest ever their full potential. And so we want to invest in the future. We want to make sure that every dollar we invest is bending the curve towards a more sustainable delivery of the services that New Brunswickers need, and that we're not just putting money into the current system, but we're changing how we do things so that the run rate is lower for the long term.
And how do you present that to government, seeking input from government on budget options? How do you present that to them by not getting the same old, reduced by 2%, and here are your 7 things that totaled 15 million in this department, this program, and these are the easy things to do? How do you get them to change those proposals as well? What do you do?
That's a great question that we're asking ourselves right now, right? Because we're learning 4 months on the job, and the first few months of that was ledge session and capital budget. So the time we've spent on the budget is really just we're 6 or 7 weeks to try and wrap our brains around a $13 billion spend across multiple departments and Crown corporations. And we're saying we need transformational change for the future of New Brunswick and better services for New Brunswickers. And you can't make transformational change in 5 or 6 weeks in the course of a budget process.
And you find that the people that are doing the regular doing, it's really hard to get them to do the regular doing and to manage the change as well. So you've got all that to work
and then
with.
add on top of that the tariff issue and the energy
issue. That no one would have expected.
We just talked about, right? So
no
you
one
spend
would have
money to prop up these jobs.
I don't know.
No one was
hopeful,
expecting
but I don't expect a whole lot in this budget for transformational change when you have so much else all going on. I hope so.
But we have to. I think that's been the frustration, is that we haven't tackled the underliers.
Right.
For the last, I don't know how many years, we could have been using the opportunity to fundamentally shift the system, and we didn't. And we're not going to kick that can down the road for another few years. We have a number of things where we need to fundamentally change how we're doing them. I mean, MB Power comes to mind, right? We can't keep going like this.
So you're the team, I guess the internal team, there'd be some crossover with the tariff and the other incentive team. So you've obviously had some proposals and things coming now already. How often does the cabinet meet on specifically on budget? And
Oof,
there's
well-
probably some pretty heavy hitting items on there as well. Would there be?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's big items because there's lots of departments that have requests, right? That we've been underspent. You know, you talk about social assistance rates that haven't gone up in forever. Things that are tied to thresholds that were set in the 90s, right? That a lot of people are saying, well, my budget hasn't changed in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And with inflation and they're still at the same level. So everybody's come to us looking for help with inflation and for a little more money. And then there's the wage bill. You know, we have
And
a
are they
lot
coming
of
with
contracts.
transformational change at the same time that they're asking for the big item? I'm not sure, but
No, but thankfully that's where our team comes
Yeah.
in because our cabinet ministers are oriented that way. We've talked about it's sometimes not just the what that you do, but the how that you do it. That was a whole page in the mandate letter, right? Is how we're going to work, is we're going to get out and on the ground, partner with local organizations that know how to deliver services efficiently. You know, we know nonprofits that have stretched a dollar so far. We watch municipalities operate in balanced budgets because they have to, right? There are partners out there that the government could turn to do things differently and better, closer to citizens and on the ground. How quickly can we do that, right? How much of this year are we going to make transformational change so that next year's budget is different, or how much of this is building the foundation so that we can start to reap some of the benefits of those big, hard, maybe costly changes?
I expect
before
that
the
there's
next
a
4
number
years.
of documents already drafted sitting on shelves in government to talk about transformational change and different opportunities. I mean, each government we've been involved with have documented something.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of Kelly Lamrock's one of his recent reports from last year on how government works and decision making and budgets and long term care. He tied it into, but it's all across social services. Forget the name of it now. But it was
How
a
it
great
broke?
how it all
Right.
broke.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So that's
Well, I read it.
yes, I imagine you have, and I'm sure there's others still looking at it, but it could give some good insights.
I'm glad you've referenced that because I'm not sure how much New Brunswickers understand that we often build to a budget number and not to a desired outcome, which is why I wanted to present at the State of the Province. These are the outcomes and outcomes that matter to New Brunswickers. I want to make this shift, and if you don't mind, I'm going to use the previous government's example.
No.
So they talked about how many doctors they recruited and how much money they spent in healthcare, right?
Which
Two
is
things that you can
traditional-
measure.
and a traditional way to measure that type of.
But did either of those two things change New Brunswickers' access to healthcare?
Right.
Because New Brunswickers' access to healthcare got worse.
Yeah.
More people didn't have a family doctor. More people had to wait longer. So you're measuring numbers of doctors and dollars spent, but it's that doesn't make a difference to New Brunswickers.
And it doesn't matter if we're not getting better health care and more access to doctors.
well, and
That's
that's
it.
what everyone says. It's not necessarily a spending because you could just spend. It's
So
the
yeah,
outcomes
so
that
it
you
isn't.
mentioned.
It shouldn't be about how many dollars
Right.
you have. For us, it's how do we make it so that every New Brunswicker has access to primary
Yeah.
care, and then how do you build your system, your programs, and your spend around that? Not how do I 2% up or down a number here. It's like what will it take, and what do we have to do differently to make sure that every New Brunswicker has access to primary care in their community within 5 days? Because we could actually, those two metrics have to be linked. We could solve the problem of getting every New Brunswicker into a family clinic tomorrow on paper. How many of them would have access within 5 days?
Another time.
You know, a single digit percentage. You know, you could also get people with a doctor access within 5 days by ballooning up the waiting list for that, right? So you've got to pick the right things to measure. We want you to have access, and you need to have timely access. And now we're going to build our programs, our budgets, our investments on how we deliver an outcome that a New Brunswicker will feel and benefit from in terms of the services they receive.
So quickly, with the short time that we have, recap those goals, the vision, those outcomes that you have prioritized.
Yeah, let me see if I can, because there were 15 of them.
Oh, well,
but,
don't have to do all 15.
Yeah, I'll do the couple of the
Top
major
three.
ones
top
because
three.
we've just hit the top two, right?
Okay.
We want New
Health.
Brunswickers to have access to primary care in their community in a timely way. You know, when your kid is sick and has a spiking fever, you want to be able to take them to see somebody immediately.
Right.
Right. So that those are the big ones. And that means getting those primary collaborative clinics open this year in New Brunswick. And we had set a goal of 10 this year. I think we're going to do more than that because there's such a willingness. It means fundamentally renegotiating our agreement of compensation with the Medical Society. Folks might remember how that goes down. But that's work that we want to do.
Yeah.
And
what are some of the other ones?
So we have literacy and numeracy results. Those really matter, right? You've got to be looking to the long term.
By grade 2?
We measure them. I think that it depends on whether you're in your Francophone or Anglophone system.
Okay.
There's a grade 4 measure in one system. There's a grade 6 measure in the other system. But the most important investments are K1 and 2, at least in terms of literacy. Like, you got to learn to read before you can read to learn. And
the government has gotten off track from literacy.
We've been
and
making
numeracy.
serious
Really?
improvements back in your day.
Well,
and then it slipped and started going down the other way. And we really need to see that turnaround. Fundamentally, we need kids that are getting the skills they need at those youngest and earliest ages. And that's where our school food program comes in too. You can't move the bar on literacy and numeracy if
With an
you've
empty
got hungry
stomach.
kids in your class. So that's a program we want to get going this September. And then if I can leave on a note, because you mentioned it, and it's work that I am excited to dig into, and I am worried about how long it's going to take, is property tax reform.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
didn't expect you to say how
No,
excited
you
you would
didn't.
be about that.
Oh, look. Well,
So are you including assessments and the property
well,
tax
it's
system?
assessments
'Cause they
and the
kinda go
property tax
together,
system.
right?
They absolutely go hand in hand. And so
That's a tough one at government.
it is a tough one, and it's a tough one to do in a year, which had been our
Yeah.
commitment. So I think we're going to see a phase 1. We're going to get a bunch of changes done and implemented this year. There's going to be more changes that'll need to be implemented in a phase 2 in year 2. But we need to fundamentally, again, this is the transformational change that we need. People are paying too much in property taxes. They have no transparency to that process. It's not competitive with our neighboring provinces. It sometimes doesn't feel like there's any rhyme or reason to it. And so we've got to get assessments
Controls.
open and clear, and people need to know how that works so that they could predict it. We need a competitive property tax system with the kind of categories that build the society we want, so that if you're going to invest in affordable housing, you're going to have the kind of property tax rate that encourages you to do that, right? And if you want to build residential and density, things that we need more of, then you need property taxes that are going to encourage that. So that's a 2025, we're going to move the needle on property taxes this year, and then there'll be more work to do in 2026. But I
You
think
can't
that's
do it all in your first year.
No, gosh, as much as
can't
you're
do
Work
that.
trying.
yourself out of a job.
Yes.
I don't want to do that.
Well, I think we made about 86 promises, and over 4 years, that means you got to get 20 or so done a
Each
year,
year.
a little more than 20 done a year, and we got 7 or 8 under our belt. So,
Quarter way
I think it's doable.
Yeah. Well,
Well, a quick little question. I know we're running out of time.
We're running out of time,
The
but-
federal Liberal Leadership
my goodness, yes.
convention is coming up soon, and be choosing the next prime minister. Who are you supporting in this campaign?
I'm not supporting anybody in this campaign. I've got to work with whoever wins, right? I've got to represent New Brunswick, and I want to make sure New Brunswick is in the best position possible to have a great, fresh relationship with whoever wins. So.
Well, there you go. Are you going to it?
No.
Okay. There you go. So, you guys want to have anything to say?
I have nothing else.
No, I just
Appreciate
really
you being here today.
big.
It is important for, I think, a premier to not only be on the big stage, but on our smaller stages too. We serve a lot of the rural areas in the province, and it is important. We appreciate that. We've asked previous premiers to come on the show, and they've been too busy, I guess, to come on. So thank you for being here.
Yes, we appreciate it.
You obviously know your files very well. You have some intensity still about you and some enthusiasm, and you
Like
gave us a
said,
little.
still.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to get drugged down in the position. It's very easy.
we saw that this week,
And
right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
it's
couple
very
premiers.
easy. 2 of your colleagues have resigned already, and moving on, and you still have that fresh energy about you. So, and we got a little glimpse into the next year ahead and what's to come. So, appreciate that. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk with you and with your audience. And I hope to continue to be connected with New Brunswickers, rural New Brunswickers, and others, big stages and little stages, with the same amount of energy for the next 4 years. So we'll see. You can hold me to that next year.
For sure, we'll have
That's
you back.
awesome.
Yeah,
Maybe
get an update.
sooner than next year, maybe next year. But thank you for giving us the time and the people in New Brunswick the time. And thank you for always being a friend.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And we want to thank our viewers on the Carr Brothers Show for watching here on CHCO TV, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on your favorite podcaster as well. So with that, we'll say goodnight and see you next time.